Last Word. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we have two special guests who have not only broken the glass ceiling, but have shattered it throughout their lives. We have Antoinette Ford, Tony Ford, who was the first female black fellow at the White House, as well as Susie Turnbull, who is now the Democratic nominee for lieutenant governor from the great state of Maryland. And I can't thank you both enough.
Great to be with you.
And what amazing women. I mean, we have you both in the same room here. And truly, you live life throughout all stages. And I know, because I know you, Susie, certainly, and I know you, Tony. And I just have to say, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Susie, for becoming lieutenant governor. What an honor.
Well, right now it's I'm a candidate,
Right.
and we're looking forward to the election on November 6th.
Yes, and I know you've worked very hard throughout your entire career on many levels, certainly on women's causes. And right now, given what we're seeing with the Me Too movement, I mean, I don't know if we'd be having these same conversations certainly 5 years ago, or that we're having today. And I mean, what you have done for women over the course of your whole career has been remarkable, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I've been very fortunate. I came to Washington as a graduate student and wound up working on Capitol Hill. Yeah. Met my husband here. We raised a family. And what we have done, and I've been able to do, is work in politics in Maryland and nationally. I was chair of the Women's Caucus of the Democratic National Committee and vice chair of the DNC when we elected Barack Obama. Right. And then I came back to Maryland and was chair of the Maryland Democratic Party. One of the things that I'm very proud of is after that I've served as well in a number of national organizations, chairing the Jewish Women International and the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, which are umbrella organizations that bring people together. I started Emerge Maryland with others on the back porch of my house. Emerge is a intensive training program for women who want to run for office. Never did I think that I was going to be one of those women, but the times have really made it very clear. In 2018, women are stepping up in huge numbers to run for office and to win. And that's why I'm so proud of the opportunity that this is giving me.
That's wonderful. And so, in turning you, Tony, I mean, you sort of had the same pathway. In a way, you were born in Philly, and I know but you came here, you came to Washington because of politics.
Well,
and you're the first in everything, I must say. I mean, you've been the first. We can go through that whole laundry list of firsts for you, but really, you did come here.
I came here
for
out
politics.
of undergraduate school, and as I was listening, I was saying it's interesting how you think you're doing things alone. But actually what you're doing, you're following processes that others are doing simultaneously. So thank you for making it possible for us to bring our lives together for the first time over really a number of years. I came here, again, because I had graduated from college and I was the first in my family to do that and all that sort of thing. But also, this was a city at the time that I came that was filled with life. And as I said a few minutes ago, I never asked anyone, may I, could I, should I, or can I? Right. It was, do it. Now, that in itself was something that I would say to people today. Don't ask permission. That immediately gives someone the opportunity to tell you no.
No. Right.
So for me, it was trying and doing the things that I wanted to do. Some of them were political. For example, I have a dear friend who wanted to run to be the head of the National Women's Political Caucus and asked me to be her campaign chair. I said, our friendship may not survive, but you will win. She did win. That was years ago. But in my own development, I was an oceanographer, yes. Why? Because it was exciting. I had the skill sets, the science background. Right. It wasn't about should I because I'm a woman or that sort of thing. But then I married. I married a native Washingtonian, and they don't leave, so I'm still here.
Right.
And we had a child. We started a family. You can't be, and I couldn't be, a desk-bound oceanographer. So I had to find something else. That led me to apply to be a White House fellow. I never thought about marriage being something different for a woman in a career, or even applying for the fellowship being something different. I did it, selected, And since I'd had science and I knew I wasn't going to be able to go back to that, what I did do was say, I need to learn about finance and funding and money. And so I asked to go to the Treasury Department. That was one of the best things I could have done because I learned everything building on something that was totally new.
Right.
And my life took a totally different path. And it took me into business, my own business. And like everything in life, you have challenges. You have turning points. And you're not necessarily prepared for them, but they're there.
Right.
And mine was when my husband's health all of a sudden created a caregiver. And you wonder, how did I wind up here? But the point is, as I heard someone say, marriages today, they may not work, so you kind of put them aside. Marriages, when I married, if it didn't work, you fixed it. Right. So we fixed it. And I had to have my business acquired, which I did, and then began to stay with him. That didn't mean stay home and do nothing. For me, it meant, I know what I can do. Right. I'm going to start a theater company and collect stories because they're remembrances. It's a reminiscence theater. But it doesn't require the charge and all of the things that a business does. I could go on and on, Christine.
Well,
I'm sure you have other questions.
We're going to get back to that. But you know, earlier, before we came on, you mentioned your bracelet. Read that again to me.
How right. One of the funniest things I think about in running for office is how certain things become like lucky charms. Right. And one of my nieces sent this bracelet to me, and the bracelet says, she believed she could, so she did.
Right.
Yes.
And I felt so good about it. And she sent this before the Democratic primary, and at that time people were thinking, well, could they win? Will they win?
Right.
And we did. And so now it's sort of a lucky charm. The other bracelet, sort of funny, is that it says, don't tell me to smile. And which is also something for a woman, I think. When you were talking, Tony, about a theater of remembrances, what campaigns are like, particularly for a woman candidate, I believe, is people tell us stories.
It's true.
And they start talking to us about the issues. And what I have found is that the reminiscences of my own story, my own narrative, have come out in ways that I never expected. Exactly. When I talk about the minimum wage and raising the minimum wage, which we did do in Montgomery County, and hope to do in Maryland to $15 for a livable wage, what I remembered is my mom worked in a department store, so did I, and it was at the minimum wage.
Probably all worked in the same store.
And it was at the minimum wage. It was at the minimum wage. You're right. Maybe pennies above that. And you remember those stories, and you remember when I talk to people about transportation problems and how are they going to get to work. My mom took 2 buses to work.
Really?
And never drove. So if you don't drive, there are so many other things.
Obstacles to your way.
And so the reminiscences and that has been one of the most remarkable parts of running for office.
Well, and I really am pleased to hear you say that, and for reasons directly related as to why someone who had been in science wanted to do that. And it's a way of teaching without teaching. Right. You are living, and you share your living. And the connection right off the bat, I'm saying, my gosh, that's what we do. And when you try to tell a younger person, not that age is important or critical, someone who hasn't had the experiences, let's put it that way, and you share that with them, it triggers something, and it triggers a connectivity that can be, because they'll remember that. I'm sure we all have something that someone said to us, and it didn't mean anything for 15 years.
Right.
But Susie, did you ever think, like 20 years ago, certainly when you were involved with the Women's Leadership Caucus, and you've mentored a lot of young women, I know you have, that you never thought you'd be here today running for, a statewide office.
Right. It was very interesting, Christine, because what happened in my case is that life intervened
Yes.
along the way.
Like everything in
Like
life.
everything else. And I am very fortunate because I was able to do a lot of different things over time. About 10 years ago, I had thought about running for office, and then the opening actually didn't happen. And so I stepped back. And so now I look at this, and meeting Ben Jealous, who was the youngest ever head of the NAACP and is a venture capitalist and is really quite a talented and inspirational person. The first time I met with him, I actually didn't even want to. I mean, I was, oh, okay, I could do this. But I wanted to find out who he was, and I wanted to learn more about him. And it was to advise and to help and to talk to him about the race and what I thought was important in the state of Maryland. What hooked us together was a conversation about college affordability. Now, I'm way past college. I have kids who are way past college, but now they have children.
Right.
And what he wants to do is make sure that college is affordable. And just 2 weeks before I met Ben, I had been sitting in a park with one of our grandsons and my son and daughter-in-law, and we were figuring out how much college was going to cost for, at that point, a 3-month-old baby. And we realized that at the rate things are going, particularly in our state of Maryland, where under the previous governor, they held tuition for 4 years without any increase, and now we've had astronomical increases. I thought, how is that going to happen? How do people pay for it? And how do we make sure that every child has opportunity? And so when Ben's talking to me about that, I could draw the grandmother and the mother out. Or when we watched earlier this year when children were sitting in classrooms in their coats. It was, this isn't about whose fault it is, it's about fixing it.
Right.
And that's
Absolutely.
and that's how I think women respond to political situations and to policy decisions.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And, Tony, you can appreciate that because you're the first in your family that went beyond the 8th grade?
Yep.
Beyond the 8th grade.
Beyond the 8th grade. However, my mother, once all 3 of her daughters were educated, said that she would not be the least educated in her family. And when she took the GED, finished, got a full scholarship to the University of Pennsylvania, no college debt.
Wow.
Finished in 4 years with a bachelor's in economics.
Really?
Yes.
So
And I won't bore you with her story, but she was an exceptional
well,
person.
so you have really
That's
good
remarkable.
genes.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
But
I knew that. We knew.
But the thing is, again, it goes to how we live our lives, and when you talk about sitting with your children, your grandchildren, when they hear that, particularly girls, when they hear what you've done, what you're willing to do, and how you did it, even if it was the first or whatever, it's inspiring. And they don't know about Mother May I. They say, I'm going to, like your bracelet.
Well, I love it. And so at this point, unfortunately, we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
We'll come back and we're going to talk about how you both started your own small businesses, which is a whole other story and chapter. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
watching The Next Word. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Chris Warnke, and tonight we're having an amazing conversation with 2 trailblazing Renaissance women, Susie Turnbull, who is the Democratic nominee for the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, as well as Antoinette Tony Ford, who was the first female black fellow at the White House under President Ronald Reagan. President Ronald Reagan. And I remember I think you mentioned about a Reagan Ford.
My daughter's name is Reagan, but
And-
she was born before Reagan was ever president.
Right.
Our last name is Ford, so
Right.
we got a lot of play.
You
We
got a
use
lot of
that
play for
lot.
Reagan Ford. Yes. What an experience. That was in 1971.
That was
So you
1971.
broke that whole ceiling
And you know, you
for black women, but I mean,
you know what, Christine? It seems to me too. Sometimes you're doing things and you don't know that you're doing them.
Right.
You literally are doing them because you want to. And in that particular instance, I applied for a White House fellowship because my daughter was too big for me to take out on the ships when I was an oceanographer, and I had to find another job. So I saw this promo for White House fellowship, and I said, and they even say you don't have to stay in your own discipline. You can, do what you want to do. And I applied. Well, I didn't think about being married, woman, or any of those things, but someone did. Long story made short, when put in a situation, you take full advantage and leverage it. And it's not negatively said, it's just understanding where you are. And for me, it was having an opportunity to say, I'm going to go to Treasury Department because I need to learn about finance. Now that I've got oceanography pretty much packed away. My mentor,
easy topic.
my mentor
Amazing.
was John Connolly.
Right.
What a better person.
Right.
At that time, also, there were opportunities regardless of what your political affiliation was, because the program was not necessarily politically oriented. Once you have a taste of what it feels like to do something really exciting that you didn't even know you could do, there's no turning back. Horizons broaden, you don't close them back.
Absolutely, and it's so well said. And for you, Susie, the fact that, I mean, to really be the Democrat nominee, to be running
Absolutely.
for lieutenant governor statewide in such such a diverse but wealth state, and I say wealth in terms of just the richness of the history and just and the people, the diversity in the people. That's truly a major accomplishment. So my hat's off to you for taking that leap into a whole other uncharted waters in a lot of ways. Even though you came out of the political world and you certainly know it better than all of us. But
It's really interesting, Christine, because since January or the end of December, I've driven about 17,000 miles.
Since
the state of
January.
Maryland,
Wow.
the state of Maryland. And the diversity of our state is incredible.
it's incredible. Yeah, I know.
From the western Maryland to the eastern shore and down to southern Maryland and up. I was in Harford County this weekend, twice actually. And no matter where you go, the issues still come back to the same thing, no matter how diverse you are. You worry about the schools for your kids, and in our state, people haven't fully funded our schools. And we're going to have a referendum in November to make sure that the casino money that was promised for schools is going to go to schools. So that's number one. Schools is huge. Healthcare, people are worried. People are worried. And they're also, the experiences that I've had have been amazing. We all have seen Emma Gonzalez, the young Parkland survivor, who, and others. I had an opportunity to sit with her. And in talking to her, I realized that every person under the age of 36 has been in school since Columbine. And Columbine was such a huge issue for all of us so many years ago. But every child since then has been in a school since Columbine. And I looked at Emma Gonzalez, who's this little person, but packed, powerful. And I said to her, "You weren't even born then." And I think about all the things that have happened over time and the experiences that some of us take for granted and things that are out there. People forget that a couple of years ago, before the Affordable Care Act, we didn't have pre-existing conditions was something that was important. So you'll talk to people and you learn so much. And it really is that working families especially are worried about, are they going to have the paycheck? How are they going to get to work? How are their kids going to be cared for? How are their parents going to be cared for? And whether you're one place or another. And then there are the additional concerns in rural areas on access to health care.
Well, that's a big one.
altogether,
Oh,
or
yeah.
dental
That's a
care.
huge dental care.
Or dental care.
Right.
And so your heart just grows as you meet all these people and you learn about them. And I will always think that the opportunity to run for office is a unique one. And I think that this year more women in the state of Maryland have chosen to do it across our country. And the voices that are out there for this election in November are ones that are bringing all those kinds of experiences. And people need to listen.
I've got to make a point that I think is very important, and that is we're recording your words. Think about what you're saying, and it just goes off into smoke if we don't record it. Art, theater, music, humanities captures, and we full circle back. When you said that Emma was not even born, but we had not Columbine, but we had Ohio. We had the 68 conventions, Kent State. All of these things, if you look at them historically, they circle back. Our art and our artists captured it. Our music, even the environment, captured it. And we don't necessarily put those together, but we should. And I think that's what, it might sound distant, but it isn't. I believe that if we really look at what we do and how we do it, we literally repeat ourselves, and that's where the reminiscence and the recordation becomes really important, because she needs to know she's not alone. It's been done before, and she can do it even better because she can pick up from the experiences that we have had. And sometimes we lose that in the moment of thinking that what we're doing is the first and only. And I kind of say, well, it might be from our view, but it's not the first and only.
No, absolutely right, Tony. You're well said, and I think going back, Susie's the question too with the younger women you meet and the millennials that they're engaged.
Yes.
They're
And they're-
absolutely
and they're-
engaged.
Yeah,
And they're the
they
age
wanna
that
be.
we were,
They're-
that we
Yes.
actually began doing
Yes.
things.
There
Yes.
are the millennials who are engaged and are the age that we were.
Yes.
Right.
There's also never a place at this point that I go to a group of women and say to them, particularly in the political sphere, how many of you have never been involved in politics before? I always ask that question.
How many?
40, 50% raise their hands that have never engaged in canvassing or phone banks or writing postcards or doing those kinds of things before. They didn't think it was as important. The last 2 years, people have really risen in a way to engage and talk about it.
Think about it. When we were coming of age, when we were making our way, how many women engineers did you ever meet?
Right.
Well, yeah.
And there weren't any. How
Right.
many women attorneys? Talk about being in politics. Where were they at all?
Right.
I can recall being of an age where if and when I left home
Right.
and I was not married, I caused a little bit of heartburn. The point being, they're in a different world, and it's exciting to watch them take on their world.
So speaking of STEM and engineering, you started a multi-million-dollar company
Yeah.
on your own.
Yeah.
You sold it to Lockheed.
Yeah.
You had a patent
Yeah.
with NASA.
I had what do you call it? I have a patent of my own.
Of your own.
That is a part of having started with NASA. With NASA, I had a license.
You had a
It
license,
was
okay.
NASA's patent.
Okay.
But I started the company because having been a political appointee, that is appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate,
Right.
you know, if you're wise, that your time is limited. You have to know that
yes, we
going
know
in.
that.
And when my time came about, I had said I've had enough of the jobs and all the challenges that go with being a woman first and only, et cetera. I'm going to try it on my own. The arrogance of saying that I could do it was such that, well, I won't know unless I try. And it was in video, in fact. It was a audio-visual information company. And I told my husband, and he laughed and said, okay, go on and try that one now, or something like that. And for the first year, I got up every day from my home and dressed like I was going to the office, went out my front door and around my corner and walked in the back,
No.
downstairs,
I
did
love it.
not
Oh
come
my
back
God,
up.
Tony, I love it.
No, I had a business, and I dare not let that man convince me that I
you
would
couldn't
not.
do.
And
I
that man
love it.
turned out to be one of my biggest supporters, but not that first
Not
year.
that first year. That's a great start. My God.
And I
Oh,
started it
wow.
with worrying about, should I spend the $14 that I had on a pencil sharpener?
Wow.
And yes, it did. It grew to a multi-million-dollar company. And that was not because we were grand alone. It was the teaching and the understanding of collaboration, support from the state of Maryland. In fact, we were
Right. You
identified
got
as a
support from the
company
state.
that should be supported by the state of Maryland. And that was a previous governor. That was
Governor was it
Glendening, Paris
Glendening, yeah.
Glendening. With that and that success, we were then invited by NASA to actually select or be part of a selection of a patent license. And we were the first company that they put into their Emerging Technology Center up off the river.
River Road?
Not River Road, no. This was in Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore.
In Baltimore. That's when I made this tremendous decision after several years. My husband's health required that I make a choice. Would it be business? Would it be making certain that everything went well at home? I opted for my home. And I said, but I'd drive everybody crazy if I didn't have something to do for me. And that's what brought me to theater. Why? Because I talk a lot, because I love stories and all that sort of
You're
thing.
great at it. It's just fabulous. Oh my God! But
But-
Susie, and Susie also has. I mean, as you have elevated so many women, and you've touched so many lives. Susie, you have too through your work, through the founding member of the internet. You chaired the International Jewish
Women
Women
International.
in-
Jewish Women International is an organization, a very storied organization that has been in operation for close to 100 years, and over 100 years. And JWI used to be known as B'nai B'rith Women, and
Right.
it has
Very powerful.
focused over the last 20 years or so, 25 years, on domestic violence
right,
issues,
women's human rights.
women's human rights, women's empowerment, financial literacy, sexual violence on campuses now is a huge issue. But talking about full circle, JWI and I know our Attorney General, Brian Frosch, here in Maryland, are now very engaged, and I hope to be very engaged, in the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act.
Yes, yes.
Which it is up again. We're getting ready to reauthorize it, and I was very instrumental in those years when I was chair of JWI to make sure that last time we included diverse communities. One of the big issues at the time was issues on Indian reservations and the problems
It's a
there.
huge sexual violence, yes.
Huge
Domestic,
issue.
yes, domestic violence.
Domestic violence. And again, that's another question I used to ask. I used to ask, how many women in this room either themselves or know someone who has been a victim of either of sexual abuse of some type? And the number there is usually like 75% of the people
Really? Yes.
raise their hands because they themselves or know someone. And the security issues of pensions and worrying about how are they going to support themselves are issues that keep people in families. We in Maryland have done a lot in the issues of domestic abuse, and I know that Ben and I will want to do
That's
more.
wonderful. Well, on that note, unfortunately, we've run out of time, and I could talk to you all for hours. I mean, what an amazing duo I have here. Thank you both. I need
It's
to have you
great-
come back.
Great fun.
Thank you
Need to
very
have you
much.
come back.
Thanks so
Enjoyed
much.
it.
Well, it was great.
And pleasure meeting you
Yes,
as well.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
You've been watching The Next Word. Thank you. Have a great evening. Good night.